I'm alone in the control room when the red indicator refuses to go dark. Midnight in Chicago is a soft vibration in the walls, steel humming through the heart of the city until something breaks rhythm and the air notices. I stare at a screen that should be a map of order and see a flicker that looks like a lie. My name is Dana Morales, Senior Signal Supervisor on the Red Line, and I have spent 3 decades translating blinks into meaning. Tonight the meaning isn't mechanical. It feels like intent. Not now, I tell the panel, because sometimes you scold a stubborn system the way you'd scold a stubborn friend. Not with a full southbound and a tight window. The steel door behind me seals itself with a deep, deliberate clunk I've never heard before. The lock light changes from green to amber. The touchpad rejects my code. The second code, the physical key. I try to play it cool, but the room feels suddenly smaller, like the walls took a step inward. I pick up the line to operations and get stuttering static for an answer. I reach for the old handset wired straight to the yard and hear the emptiest kind of silence. I take a breath and look at the analog panel on the wall, the dusty one people forget is the reason we survive dishonest nights. Copper doesn't lie. Relay logic doesn't improvise. The city can go digital on the surface. Underneath, a good system still needs its bones. Outside the glass wall, a kid in a gray hoodie lifts a notebook and presses it to the window with both hands. Thick Sharpie letters fill the page. Southbound full. He's got a backpack, a mop of hair, a badge that says temporary, and the eyes of someone who has not learned to look bored at danger. That's Mo, short for Morris Parker, my summer intern in the flesh. He mouths, "You good?" I make a flat line with my hand and then jab my finger toward the red indicator that won't behave. He nods, scribbles on the notebook again, and holds up, "Track 3 won't drop." "Yeah," I say to an empty room. "I see it." On the screen, the southbound cue looks normal. On the analog panel, the tiny needle twitches like a nervous habit. I trust the needle. I tap the glass, and the needle twitches again, not in time with anything except something I don't like. I point to the side door. Mo hustles around and tries the exit. He shrugs, "Locked." He points at the door's indicator. It's amber, same as mine. We're sealed in and sealed out, both at once. Me inside the control room, him outside, separated by a pain and a little faith. I've got about 2 minutes of grace if the next southbound clears on schedule. But it won't, because track 3 won't drop, which means the block still thinks it's occupied when it isn't, or it thinks it isn't when it is, or someone wants us to think the wrong thing so we'll do the right thing at the wrong time. The system is built to prevent human error. It's not built to prevent an intelligent intention. On nights like this, intention is the only thing that scares me. I walk to the old metal panel on the back wall. It's taller than I am and older than the building. The lacquered diagram shows a younger version of the line, yellowed with time. I pull down the protective lid and expose rows of fuses, a strip printer with a grim patience, and a manual switch that was built for a century that did not yet know Wi-Fi. I touch the paper tape. It ticks a little to show me it's alive. "Okay," I say. And I say it to 2 different eras at once. If somebody wants to move my hand, they need to take it out of mine. I tap the intercom button that pings the floor, the last working channel in the building. It's an old loop, low voltage, short range, unloved because it's not fancy. "Mo, you hear me?" He jumps as if my voice emerging from a ceiling tile is a magic trick. "Yes, ma'am, I'm here." "You know the map of the yard?" "I studied it before I came, but it's my first week." "Good," I say. "You're going to learn the real map. I need you to go to Junction House B. Take the service stairs. The exterior doors are probably locked with whatever this is, but the stairs should get you through mechanical. Look for a gray cabinet marked B-3. There's a relay inside. If it's energized, you'll hear it. If it's hot, do not touch it. Just tell me what you see.
If there's a maintenance crew on the rails, you wave them off. You do not cross a live track, and you don't play hero. I'll get you safe. You get me eyes. He nods and writes down B3 in thick letters, then points to his own chest like, me? Yeah, I tell him. You. He looks frightened for 1 second and then does the bravest thing I've seen all night. He turns and moves. I watch him in the corners of the monitors, little security feeds that still behave because they're too dumb to lie. I watch him jog down the corridor and punch a door that gives because it's bolted to a mechanical lock that cares more about gravity than software. On the digital board, the southbound begins to nose into a block it shouldn't. On the analog panel, the paper ticks an event that the screen doesn't admit. I flip the manual to cut power to the suspect approach, and the lines on the screen blink in protest. Lie to me all you want, I say. I've got copper on my side. The lock indicator on the door blinks once and then settles back into amber like it thought about being honest and decided not to. I try the handset again and get a ghost of a voice. Control? I call. Anyone on ops catching this? That's not protocol. Do you want a second train in a block with a phantom? Because I don't. Do you want me to wait for a vendor in Minnesota to tell me Chicago needs to breathe? Because I won't. He sighs, as if I'm the stubborn part of the problem. Fine. Temporary hold. Make no additional changes without authorization. I'm locked in, I say. Control room door sealed on a safety lockdown. Mo's locked out. The phones are bad. Someone's writing my board. I need a physical confirm in B3. Maintenance is short-staffed tonight. Then I sent the intern. Silence hums as if it's impressed by my audacity. Don't send a kid into live equipment, Edson says, like he's writing a note to protect himself later, not protect the kid now. He's not touching anything. He's looking. He'll tell me if the relay is chattering and I'll decide with my eyes open, not my screen. You're on record. That's where I live, I tell him, and kill the line that doesn't deserve any more oxygen. I go back to the old panel and watch the strip print. Each event stamps with time and a code. The codes speak in a dialect older than the laptop logged in at my desk. I like this language. It doesn't pretend to be pretty. It doesn't care about user experience. It just says what happened, and if you don't like it, that's your problem. A minute drags like a pulled brake. Then the ceiling speaker cracks again. I'm at B3. Mo says. His voice is breathless, excited, trying to be brave. What do you see? Gray cabinet, size of a fridge. The relay panel is open a crack like somebody forgot to close it. There's a hum, steady, and a chattering one on the far right. I can feel warm air like it's been running hot. The label on the chatter says T3 drop. Of course it does, because somebody's laughing at our expense. Any maintenance workers on the rail? I don't see any. The catwalk is clear. There's a distant train horn, but it's slow, like a yard move. Hold tight, I say, which is silly because there's nothing to hold. I use the analog switch to enforce the drop. The chattering relay goes quiet in Mo's ear like a dog hearing a whistle. It stopped, he says. On the digital board, the phantom clears and the southbound gets a clean path. For a second, everything looks like it might behave. Then the next block upstream lights in a way it never should. 2 states at once, as if it's being dragged by somebody's invisible hand. Morales, Edson's voice is back. Vendor believes we have a transient short. Vendor can believe what they want. A transient short doesn't selectively lock doors and selectively lie to my screen. Transients don't write English. Nobody's writing English, he says too fast. Then you didn't just tell me to wait for them to advise, I say. And I can't help the edge because there's only so much gaslighting you can swallow on an empty stomach. Keep things stable, he says. We're coordinating with the city. There's a lot of attention on this. I'm aware. The intercom pops again. Mo's voice is closer to a whisper now, as if the equipment prefers secrets. If I can get to B2, I might see if the feed there is clean. The corridor light is flickering. I think somebody was here, like recently. Explain. Dust on the floor shows shoe scuffs, fresh, and there's a wrapper from a protein bar that isn't on the rail crew's approved list. Only you would know that, I say. He read the memos, he says. And I actually grin because the kid is trying to be professional under stress like he's rehearsed this his whole life. You've got 45 seconds, I tell him. Move to B2. Eyes only. If there's anything that even smells like risk, you stop.
He moves. The monitors give me a mosaic of night corridors and sodium orange stairwells. The city above is asleep and alive in the same breath, a paradox that keeps me in love with it even when it tests me. For a handful of minutes we hold. The southbound clears, the upstream block behaves. I let my lungs unclench half an inch, and then the whole board ripples with a command pattern I've never seen. It's not random, it's not a failure, it's choreography. Someone upstream swaps signals in a sequence the system won't admit. The analog strip prints it anyway, stubborn and honest. I've had enough. I try the door again, not because I think it will open, but because muscle memory is a religion. The indicator stays amber, which feels like mockery. What do you want? I ask the air. Do you want me to wait until we stack trains into a braid and choke the city? Do you want a headline? Is that the game? On the intercom, Mo whispers, I'm at B2. The cabinet looks clean, no chatter. Wait, there's a second panel here that's newer than everything else. No label, just a brushed steel faceplate with a tiny keyhole. It doesn't match the rest. Walk away from it. I didn't touch it, he says. I look at the bad pattern on my board and picture someone in my house moving pieces, not because they're allowed, but because they can. I picture a meeting I didn't attend where someone used the word privatization like it tasted fancy, and I picture a future where systems like mine are run by people who write euphemisms instead of wiring diagrams. I won't have it. Mo, I say, take your phone and snap a photo of that unlabeled panel. Then go to the mezzanine, watch the track for a glint. You'll know it when you see it, the shine where it shouldn't be. It'll tell you somebody attached something under a rail. Eyes only, no touching. If you fall, I will personally resurrect you to scold you. I'll be careful. He goes. I turn back to the other voice in my life tonight. Edson, I say into the handset that barely deserves the name. We have a rogue device in B2 and a pattern on the board that isn't a transient. Locking down the control room looks a whole lot like somebody telling me not to look behind a curtain. You want to tell me why safety authorized a vendor panel that doesn't show up on my inventory? Long silence. Too long. Don't make assumptions that will complicate a clean response, he says finally. The phrase is so polished it squeaks. A clean response would be to tell me why I can't get out of my own room. I'm working on it.
While you're working on it, I say, I'm going to keep people alive. The strip printer grinds as if it agrees. The next 15 minutes are a war fought in tiny choices. A train I hold even though the screen insists it's safe. A manual override that makes the digital board throw a tantrum. A call to a yard operator on a line that only works if you keep your voice low and your will high. I earn a few curses I can live with. I avoid one mistake that would have eaten me alive if I'd made it. I steal back control, square by square, like I'm taking a city from a bad map. Found it, Mo says on the intercom, voice tight with equal parts fear and triumph. There's a device under the southbound between B2 and B3. Looks like a clamp. It's new metal and old dirt. There's a cable running from it into a junction well. Eyes only, I remind him, though my heart is already 3 steps ahead. Eyes only, he echoes. You're going to back out to the service platform. You're going to sit on your hands. You're going to drink water. You're going to keep the phone on, screen off. You're going to listen for my voice and your own breathing. I hear him sit. I hear him breathe. I finally have enough proof to call it what it is, at least to myself. Sabotage. What kind and by whom is still a question with sharp edges, but the pattern reeks of deliberate interference, not failure. The unlabeled panel in B2 isn't shy about surviving. The clamp under the southbound is the kind of thing that wants attention, and a locked control room is the kind of insult that asks for a longer life than tonight. Whoever they are, they did their homework. So did I. I go quiet. Not in my actions, which stay constant. In my head. I slow my thinking in the way that only years of doing a thing can teach you to do. Panic is an excellent listener and a terrible advisor. I look at the printed strip, the analog record that doesn't care if you're angry. I watch it not for events, but for rhythm. There it is again. A sequence that repeats like someone at a piano practicing with one hand. The timing between the forced drops is too exact to be a coincidence. A person did that. A person who knows what delay the system uses to debalance. A person who knows what our vendor still doesn't fix because it's cheaper to train us to work around it. I think of Edson's voice, smooth as glass. I think of his calendar last month, how he flew to a city I don't like to pronounce because it sounds like PR. I think of the memo about strategic modernization partners and the way operations people read those words with a polite face and a second face underneath. I think of how a controlled crisis sells a solution better than a slideshow. The next time the pattern starts, I decide to do something that would get a younger version of me written up. I let it run. I don't block it immediately. I give it rope. The system thinks it's got me distracted by my own curiosity. The person on the other end thinks the same. That's good. Let them think it. The city is a sleeping animal, but it twitches when you touch certain nerves. I make calls. I detour one empty train into a pocket track we barely use because it's not pretty. I put 2 maintainers into a spot where the pattern can't reach them. I borrow a yard shunter and park it in a place that looks random and isn't. My goal isn't to catch somebody who might be smart enough to stay invisible. My goal is to force a decision that requires a hand, not a ghost. The unlabeled panel in B-2 is the closest thing we have to a fingerprint. If you want to escalate the pattern, you'll need to be near it. If you physically approach it, the badge reader in the corridor, which isn't integrated with anything fancy because nobody thought it should be, will record a time and a number. There's also a maintenance logbook in that corridor because I'm old-fashioned and like a written record for routine tasks. Saboteurs don't like paper. They forget it exists. At 1:38 a.m., the pattern intensifies, a drummer adding 1 extra beat to dare me to flinch. I don't. I throw a saccharine announcement into the system, a bland voice that says, due to a temporary signal issue, expect minor delays. I don't want the city to wake with a scream. I want it to turn over and give me 20 minutes. Mo, I say into the ceiling, you still with me? Yes, he says. I need you to do one more thing. It's going to feel counterintuitive. I want you to step into the corridor beyond B2, slow, quiet. I want you to pretend you're lost. If you see anyone you don't recognize, you tell them you're new and you're trying to find the restroom. He freezes so hard I can hear it. I won't let you get hurt, I add. You're a decoy, not a hero. You see, you speak, you retreat. Copy, he whispers, and I hate that he says copy because it means he understood me perfectly. I watch the black and white feed flick to a frame of dirty corridor and a line of cabinets that look like refrigerators from a movie about the 70s. I watch Mo turn the corner as if he's thinking about his posture and not his fear. He vanishes out of one camera's angle and into another. Footsteps, then a shadow, then a shape that is human in the way a human can be intimidating when it doesn't try. He's built like a person who commands rooms with presence alone, not volume. He's wearing a high visibility vest because irony likes to dress up as safety. I can't see his face. I can see the badge swinging on his chest. Mo says in a voice pitched to a teenager who got a job he doesn't want to lose, "Sir, I'm sorry. Do you know where the nearest restroom is? I'm new and I got turned around." The man pauses. He moves close enough to reach out and adjust Mo's fear if he wanted to. He doesn't. He points back the way Mo came with a brisk motion. His other hand covers his badge without thinking, the way some people cover their phone in public, a small tell that says everything. "Thank you," Mo says, and turns. He's good. He doesn't run. He walks. The man doesn't follow. He walks in the other direction, to the unlabeled panel. "Come back," I say, "now." Mo moves. The corridor swallows him and spits him out into the safer air of the mezzanine. He breathes like a person again. I pick up a different line, one that doesn't like me tonight, and I dial a number I've dialed exactly 3 times in my career. The number belongs to a foreman who remembers the old rules and respects them. "Arnett," he says, voice like gravel in winter. Chief Arnett runs track crews with the patience of a saint and the temper of a man who knows saints rarely get what they deserve. "It's Morales," I say. "I need you in B2 corridor with bright eyes and a pleasant smile about 3 minutes ago." "I'm already walking," he says, which is why I called him. While we wait for the minutes to do what minutes do, I take the piece of this night that I haven't looked at directly and I turn it over. The door lock, the pattern, the unlabeled panel, the clamp, the voice that wants me to wait for vendor advice, the shimmering promise of modernization that people like me are supposed to clap for because it wears a suit. I know this trick. I've seen it on many scales. You turn dysfunction into a brand opportunity. You make sure the dysfunction is visible but not bloody. You blame the system you want to replace. You ride in with a fix that diverts money from people who do the work to people who manage those who do the work. You write the city a story about efficiency and you sell it a bill of goods. I remember the day 30 years ago when I signed on, and a man with an older face than mine today told me, "Kid, this job is 2 things, moving people and refusing to flinch. If you ever have to choose, you move people." He meant more than trains. The intercom crackles. I see Arnett, 2 others with him. "Stay put and let him be the adult," I say. "News to me that I'm not," he mutters, and I let myself smile again, because humor is a safety valve. In the corridor, Arnett appears on my banged-up feed. He moves like a man who knows everyone is watching him and doesn't care. He gestures to one of his crew who pulls out a small camera that prints on the spot, like the world is a crime scene you can fit in your pocket. The other crew member flips open a hardbound logbook on a shelf that looks decorative until the day it saves your hide. Arnett bends to look at the unlabeled panel. He doesn't touch it either. He points at the badge reader on the wall and then at the hardbound logbook. He is making a list out of this night. "What are you doing?" Edson's voice stings the air. He must be monitoring my world on a screen in an office with better lighting and worse judgment. "I am supervising a corridor," I say. "I did not authorize track personnel to access the signal corridor." "They didn't access, they observed. Observing is free. You want to talk about authorization? Talk to whoever locked me in my own control room." Silence again. Not the kind quiet, the kind that hides teeth. The screen shows an event I've been waiting to see. The badge reader in the corridor blinks. The camera catches the badge at a precise angle, a still frame that is kind to us and unkind to the person who walked too close to something they shouldn't. The hardbound logbook records a note in pen that will feel very heavy in a week. Arnett's crew doesn't smile, but their posture changes, as if the night developed a spine. I want to see it. And one of Arnett's crew holds the printed photo up to a camera that should be too old to give me a good look. It's not perfect, but it's enough. It's a city-issued badge with a name on it that I can feel my body reject before my brain confirms it. There are ways to justify the unjustifiable. There are speeches that make choices sound like weather, inevitable and impersonal. But it's hard to smooth your voice when your badge is a key in the wrong door. The name is as clear as a siren in a quiet room.
Adson, I say, if you're still on the line, I need you to come down here, right now. He is coordinating at a strategic level, he says. He still sounds composed. He always sounds composed. That's his trick. Then coordinate your feet to the B2 corridor. That's not necessary. I think it is, I say, and I don't raise my voice because I don't have to. He doesn't agree. He doesn't hang up. He just evaporates the way some people do when the air gets inconvenient. For a while, we keep the system breathing and the city asleep enough to dream of better nights. I move trains with a tenderness that would embarrass me to admit. I accept a detour that will make morning crews curse me and later thank me. I promise a southbound operator that the red will honor its oath, and it does. We hold. The strip prints. The paper curls at my feet like it wants to stitch a quilt out of events. Half an hour later, with the shape of the night changed just enough by what we did, Edson arrives at the corridor wearing a vest that says safety, as if a vest can confer the honor of the word. He holds up his hands like a man who wants everyone to see they're empty. Arnett stands with him, polite as winter. You can't be down here, Edson tells Arnett's crew, which is funny because it should be the other way around. Where we need to be, Arnett says. He's not a man who wastes syllables. On my intercom, I say to Mo, stay put, learn with your eyes. Edson points to the unlabeled panel and frames his next line like it's a relief. We authorized an emergency diagnostics module to help the vendor study intermittent failures. It's a temporary installation. It should have been labeled. I'll address that. Emergency diagnostics don't lock my control room, I say to the ceiling, and Edson looks up as if he forgot I live in rooms like that. That lock was an automated safety condition, he says. Triggered by what? We're investigating, he says. Your badge reads, Arnett says, and shows him the photo dead straight. You were here, Edson. Of course, Edson says, I have responsibilities. Responsibilities don't usually leave clamps under rails, I say, and the word clamp makes his eyes narrow just a fraction. He's careful. He's always careful. His mistake tonight was quantity. You do too many careful things in a row, and they pattern. I've been doing something else while we danced. I've been printing everything. The analog strip prints by default. I set the digital logs to dump to a local buffer we don't use anymore because the new systems prefer the cloud, as if a storm doesn't roll through a city and eat a network for breakfast. My printer coughs out data with the smell of warm paper that makes me nostalgic for a kind of truth we can hold. It'll be elevating to the board, Edson says, as if that ends anything, as if a higher room means higher ground. We need a unified message. We need absolute honesty, I say, and I hate how naive that sounds, even as I insist on it. We need to tell the city that tonight, while it slept, 2 professionals and a kid and a foreman made choices that kept it safe. We need to tell it that the system won't always be saved by the brand you're selling. We need to tell it that capacity is more than a statistic. It's a promise not to gamble with lives to score a procurement. That's an irresponsible accusation, he says. He's good with the phrases. You can dress anything up if you say it smooth. It's an observation supported by time-stamped logs, badge reader data, a live body in a corridor, and the fact that I can't leave my own room, I say. He's not going to confess in a hallway. He's not going to break a sweat. He's going to wait me out and then file a report that makes him the adult in the room. I know the species. The good news is that I'm not alone. The better news is that the city is built of rooms inside rooms, some of which belong to us and some of which belong to everyone. A hearing is a room you can make honest if you fill it with enough truth that it embarrasses lies. I don't love hearings, but I don't hate daylight. Mo, I say, walk with Arnett to the mezzanine. You three are going to file incident reports in ink. You're going to note times and locations. You're going to sign your names. Then you're going to go home and sleep for 2 hours and show up tomorrow in a clean shirt. What about you? Mo asks.
I'm going to sit with my panel and make sure the dawn trains roll like a promise fulfilled, I say. After that, I'll meet you at City Hall. You can't just call a hearing, Edson says. I didn't say I could, I said I'll meet them. You already called them without meaning to. Nights like this travel. The rest of the night doesn't pretend to be gentle, but it's honest. The pattern tries one last time to push us into a compromise. I push back. The strip prints. The paper pile at my feet looks like a small white mountain I climbed by staying still. At 5:21 a.m., the door lock clicks and goes green. I try the handle and feel it move under my hand like a concession. I step into the corridor and the air tastes different, like relief built into paint. Mo is waiting at the far end with circles under his eyes and a grin that won't quit. He wants validation, not because he's needy, but because he did a thing that mattered and wants to know if the world agrees. You did well, I say. You did everything, he says. I kept the room, I say. You saw the world. That counts. He nods. He tries to act like the words don't levy rent in his chest. He fails. Good. I don't trust anyone who doesn't pay rent to the work. Morning comes with coffee and crosstalk. Operators arrive and speak in the language of shift changes, the shorthand that makes a city durable. I go home for a shower that tries to scrub the night off and only makes it shine differently. I put on a clean blazer I haven't worn since the last time I had to look respectable to people who respect the wrong things. On my way out, I pick up the paper mountain I saved and slide it into a box that once held printer ink and now holds a story. City Hall smells like conversations that last longer than they should and shorter than they need. The board sits at a dais that tries to make adults out of everyone. It doesn't always work. The room is full of people who never wake early unless something went wrong. Some wear suits like armor. Some wear work boots like conviction. Some wear the faces of people who ride a system every day and don't want to wonder if it will love them back. Chair Lewis bangs the gavel like the tradition it is. She's in her 50s, sharp, tired, wary of drama unless drama keeps a city alive. Your badge reads, Arnett says, and shows him the photo dead straight. You were here, Edson. Of course, Edson says, I have responsibilities. Responsibilities don't usually leave clamps under rails, I say, and the word clamp makes his eyes narrow just a fraction. He's careful. He's always careful. His mistake tonight was quantity. You do too many careful things in a row, and they pattern. I've been doing something else while we danced. I've been printing everything. The analog strip prints by default. I set the digital logs to dump to a local buffer we don't use anymore because the new systems prefer the cloud, as if a storm doesn't roll through a city and eat a network for breakfast. My printer coughs out data with the smell of warm paper that makes me nostalgic for a kind of truth we can hold. It'll be elevating to the board, Edson says, as if that ends anything, as if a higher room means higher ground. We need a unified message. We need absolute honesty, I say, and I hate how naive that sounds, even as I insist on it. We need to tell the city that tonight, while it slept, 2 professionals and a kid and a foreman made choices that kept it safe. We need to tell it that the system won't always be saved by the brand you're selling. We need to tell it that capacity is more than a statistic. It's a promise not to gamble with lives to score a procurement. That's an irresponsible accusation, he says. He's good with the phrases. You can dress anything up if you say it smooth. It's an observation supported by time-stamped logs, badge reader data, a live body in a corridor, and the fact that I can't leave my own room, I say. He's not going to confess in a hallway. He's not going to break a sweat. He's going to wait me out and then file a report that makes him the adult in the room. I know the species. The good news is that I'm not alone. The better news is that the city is built of rooms inside rooms, some of which belong to us and some of which belong to everyone. A hearing is a room you can make honest if you fill it with enough truth that it embarrasses lies. I don't love hearings, but I don't hate daylight. Mo, I say, walk with Arnett to the mezzanine. You 3 are going to file incident reports in ink. You're going to note times and locations. You're going to sign your names. Then you're going to go home and sleep for 2 hours and show up tomorrow in a clean shirt. What about you? Mo asks.
We have an emergency session, she says, because nobody wanted to call it that until the word felt necessary. A red line overnight disruption that did not become a disaster. We'll begin with Director of Safety, Mr. Hale. Edson stands like a man who owns his gravity. He speaks like a man who inherited his sentences from a better politician. He thanks crews, he thanks partners, he thanks the vendor like a sponsor. He calls last night a convergence of minor issues that were resolved by protocol and professionalism. He blames a legacy subsystem for sending confusing signals. He uses the word modernization 3 times and the word community twice, and the word accountability not at all. He does not mention a clamp or a lock. He does not mention his badge in a corridor. He smiles with his voice, which is a trick I admire, even when I don't. When he finishes, Chair Lewis nods and looks at her list. We'll hear from Senior Signal Supervisor Morales. I walk up to the microphone and wish I could bring my panel with me. I bring my box instead. I rest it on the small table like a lunch nobody wants to eat. Good morning, I say. And the room says it back, because we're civilized even when the might wasn't. I've been on this line for 30 years. I've seen good luck and bad. Last night wasn't luck, it was a decision. I don't start with the accusation. I start where the city lives. Trains and timing and trust. I described the red that wouldn't go dark. I described the lock on my control room. I described the analog strip that told the truth. I mentioned the unlabeled panel. I mentioned the clamp without naming who put it there, because I like my accusations seasoned with more than my conviction. I describe a kid who left his comfort zone for mine, a foreman who respects paper, a system that survived because we refused to delegate life to a screen. I hold up the print strip, and I hold up the badge photo. They look ordinary and incriminating at once. I ask the room to notice how people in vests save the day without a press release. I ask them to notice how some people want to sell us a solution that doesn't fix what last night broke. Chair Lewis leans forward. Are you stating that there was deliberate tampering? I'm stating that there was an unlabeled device in our corridor and a physical alteration under a rail and a pattern of interference that does not look like nature, I say. I'm also stating that the lock on my control room did not fail. It enforced. I'm further stating that the badge reader in that corridor recorded entries that can be matched against time-stamped events on my panel. She doesn't ask for a name. She's not a fool. She knows the name. The room is filled with people whose hearing is excellent when gossip reaches them and subpar when truth tries. Mr. Hale, your response.
Edson thanks me for my service, which is a way of congratulating me into silence. He says the unlabeled panel was a vendor tool. He says the clamp was a legitimate diagnostic. He says the lock was a coincidence of safety enforcement that trapped the wrong person. He says his badge can be in many places for many reasons because he's a director and directors direct. He says a lot of things that sound plausible if you want them to. I open my box and take out one more thing. It's a stack of carbon copies, old ones, maintenance logs from my grandfather's era, not because they matter to last night, because they remind us what we're trying to keep. I tell the room that modernization without memory is destruction with a nicer font. I tell them the system doesn't need a brand, it needs a backbone. I tell them I'll train modernization myself if it remembers to love the people it moves. Mo speaks next when the chair invites him by virtue of the fact that he's literally vibrating in his chair and might pass out if he doesn't. He tells the room the truth the way only a 17-year-old can. Breathless, exact, grateful to be alive, proud to be useful. He talks about the unlabeled panel like a kid describing a ghost. He talks about the corridor like a maze he solved because someone handed him a thread. He doesn't embellish. He doesn't accuse. He tells the city in his way that it can ask kids like him to do hard things if it promises not to betray them. Arnett speaks with half the syllables Edson used and twice the effect. He holds up the logbook like a Bible nobody reads anymore. He says, "We wrote it down." He says, "We showed up." He doesn't say a lot. You don't need to when you bring the right object. A vendor rep says some words like the noise a TV makes when you fall asleep in front of it. I don't hate them. They're doing their job. Their job is to make last night look like a reason to hire them. My job is to make last night look like a reason to trust us. Chair Lewis asks for a recess and leaves us with a room full of air heavy as the oldest brick. When she returns, she puts on reading glasses that aren't for reading. They're for seeing. "Here's what we're doing," she says. "We're suspending any new installations until we finish a third-party audit. We're commissioning an independent review of last night's events with subpoena power for access to logs, credentials, and communications. We're instructing safety to separate itself from procurement for the duration of that review. We're sending our thanks to the people who worked the night while the city slept. We're asking them to design mandatory drills that require analog proficiency within 90 days. We'll pay them to teach us the bones of the system that saved us." There's a sound in the room like relief disguised as coughing.
Mr. Hale, she adds, while the review is ongoing, your duties are delegated. That sentence balances on the edge of a life and then steps to the side. He doesn't argue in public. He's smarter than that. He stares at a spot on the dais like it insulted him and nods with a grace that is technically admirable. He's not a cartoon villain. He's the kind who justifies. I'm not a cartoon hero. I'm the kind who refuses to let the justification go unchallenged. After the hearing, the city moves the way it always does, chaotically on the surface, beautifully underneath. People return to their jobs, which are harder than the people with microphones admit. Mo comes up to me on the plaza and looks like someone who grew 2 inches in a night. "I didn't know if I should say that much," he says. "You said the right amount." "I was shaking so hard," he says. "You'll shake again," I tell him. "That's all right. Hands that shake can still save a life." He nods. He wants to ask about Edson. I let him.
What will happen to him? Mo asked. That's for the review and the law to decide, I say, which is true and not the whole truth. The rest of the truth is that systems are quieter than justice and noisier than conscience. Some men land on their feet, some don't. What matters is that we add friction where there used to be grease. I go back to work. There's a rumor that I'm going to retire now that I've had my grand stand. Rumors are the city's trivia. I stay. I do something better than leave. I write a training module called Analog Skills for a Digital Era, and I make it mandatory for anyone who wants to be senior. I teach kids like Mo to read a strip of printed tape and listen to the way a relay complains and tell the difference between an error and a lie. I teach them not to romanticize the old, just to respect it. I teach them to say modernization when they mean service, and to say service like it's sacred. Edson's review drags and then descends like a piano moved down a tight staircase. Facts bang into corners and leave scars that match their shape. The independent team finds things I suspected and things I didn't. There were emails, there were meetings, there were phrases like strategic tolerance for managed failure that make me want to retire to a farm and talk to tomatoes. There was a clamp, and there was a badge, and there was a lock that should never have locked. There were consequences. They weren't fireworks. They were paperwork, which in this town is the same thing but slower. His delegation becomes a parting. It's not satisfying. It's sufficient. One evening, weeks later, Mo brings coffee into my control room and puts it down like an offering. "You hear?" he asks. "I hear things. I got into the apprenticeship," he says, and his grin could power a small town. "Of course you did." "I want to be good at this," he says, like I might doubt him. "You already are," I tell him. "You want to be great. That's worse." I let the joke land and then add, "We'll get you there." He looks out the window at a city that trusts us again. For now. Trust is always for now. He watches a southbound slide through a green like a prayer answered without need for a church. "Do you ever get tired of the hum?" he asks. "It's the sound of a promise," I say. "It keeps me honest." He watches me fuss with the analog panel like a gardener with an old hose. He asks a question he's earned the right to ask. "Were you afraid?" I say, "Every minute. That's the job." Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the insistence that other people get to go home. He nods, slow, like he's filing that somewhere he won't lose it. He takes his place at a secondary console and moves a train with his finger hovering over a button like it's somebody's mother or lover on board, which it is. I like the way he treats the city like it's a person. In the weeks after, I get emails I don't expect. Operators who usually tell me about problems tell me about how the new module helped them see an old trick. Station managers tell me the announcements sound calmer. Riders send a handful of notes that aren't complaints. They say they noticed the trains were a minute slower and felt like they were on purpose. The city only writes when something is wrong or when it's trying very hard to be grateful. I accept both. There's a night when the board lights wrong again and everything wants to hurtle into memory. I feel my heart start to do the stupid dance it does when repetition whispers doom. Then I see the cause. It's a raccoon with more courage than sense, sitting exactly where a censor cares too much about life. I laugh out loud, which I don't do often at work. I route around a raccoon with the care I gave a saboteur. And the raccoon lives, and the train lives, and so do I. Months pass, and the city teaches me new ways to love it. I drive by the corridor one afternoon on a day shift and poke my head into B2.
There's a new label on the panel that used to hide under brushed steel. It says in clear letters, Diagnostics. Below that, Authorized Access Only. Below that, Report anomalies immediately. Somebody learned to write. The hard-bound logbook sits where it sat before. There's a pin chained to it like it might run away. The entries look like the city's handwriting, messy and legible and deeply sincere. I add my name on a line that doesn't need me. I like to leave traces that don't demand applause. On a slow Sunday, I get a call. It's Chair Lewis, who never wastes my time unless she needs to. Her voice has the professional warmth of a woman who has to live in rooms where everyone performs sincerity. We're naming a training scholarship, she says. We'd like to call it the Morales Grant for Analog Proficiency. The vendor is contributing. So is the city. You don't have to do that, I say, because I'm not good at receiving honors. We do, she says. Not for you, for the kids who will come after you and be better because you annoyed them into learning. I don't argue. I've learned to accept when the city does something unambiguously right. It makes the days when it doesn't a little easier to bear. There's one more conversation I carry with me like a smooth stone in my pocket. A few weeks after his parting, Edson asks to meet. He chooses a cafe near a courthouse because people who lose rooms try to find new ones where the furniture looks neutral. He wears a sweater instead of a suit because he wants me to see a man, not a role. He says, I want to say I'm sorry. For what? I ask. He takes too long to answer, and I learn something I didn't expect. Even men who are good at smoothing their voices can trip when they pick the right word. He says, for the way I discounted you, for treating your experience like an obstacle, for forgetting that systems don't work unless the people who love them get to run them. That's not an apology for the night, I say, because I won't let him pick the easy version. He tilts his head. He touches the rim of his coffee like it can stop him from burning. That night can't be unpacked with a sentence, he says. I'll be dealing with it a long time. I will also always believe my intent was safety and modernization. You will always believe I use those words to justify control. We can both be a little wrong and a lot sure. Maybe, I say. Do you forgive me? He asks. The question sits between us like a third chair. I don't do forgiveness on schedules, I say. I do my job. I teach kids to outlast me. I tell the truth when the room asks. If you want a blessing, you're in the wrong church. He laughs. Real, not polite. You know, I always liked you. You like that I did my job, I correct him. I liked that you made mine harder, he says. There are worse compliments. We part like professionals who have finally become people. He'll have a new job in a city where nobody knows what his badge did. He'll write memos with the same elegance. Maybe he'll remember to label a panel. Maybe he won't. My job doesn't change because his did. My job is a river. People step in and out. The river stays. Another winter finds us. The line sings differently in cold. The metal contracts and argues. We argue back with heat and patience. Mo stands at my shoulder and moves trains with the grace of someone who was told an adult thing too young and didn't resent it. He corrects my arithmetic without smugness. He makes me put on my reading glasses when I pretend I can still see subscript codes without them. You ever think of leaving? He asks one slow night. I do, every week. You?
Every day, he says, and then he grins because the right answer is the next one, and then I remember I'm not done. Good, I say. People who don't think about leaving don't stay for the right reasons. He watches the board, which behaves like a loyal dog tonight. He sips his coffee. He clears his throat. Can I tell you something? I've been meaning to. Tell me something. That night, he says, and he doesn't have to specify which one, when you told me to go into the corridor and pretend to be lost, I was sure I was going to mess it up and make everything worse. You didn't. He knows. And then he adds, but I learned something else too. I learned that bravery isn't some giant thing you do one time. It's 1,000 tiny things you do exactly when you don't want to. It's boring sometimes. It's terrifying others, but mostly it's boring. And I think that's why people like you don't get statues. I don't want a statue, I say. I wasn't offering, he says, and we both laugh, and the sound fills the room like a fresher oxygen. A call comes in, a voice we don't know, scared, reports a smell at a station that sounds like electricity complaining. We treat it like everything. We listen. We send a crew. We slow the trains just enough to be careful without announcing fear into the air. The smell turns out to be from a fried ballast resistor. Old, cranky, cheap to fix. Boring enough to save lives daily. We sign the work order, and I think, not for the first time, that most of the heroism in this job looks like paperwork filled out legibly. The night gets quiet enough to think again, and I think about the city as a person I love. It has moods. It has failures. It breaks my heart and mends it without apology. It doesn't say thank you, not often. It shows me gratitude by not punishing my carelessness harshly when I'm tired, and by rewarding my stubbornness loudly when I'm not. It keeps me honest without asking me to be perfect. It knows I'll be back tomorrow. Before shift end, I walked to the back of the control room and touched the analog panel like a talisman. The lacquered map has been updated since the night we didn't sleep. Somebody cleaned a glass, somebody replaced a fuse that flickered just enough to bother me. The paper strip sits fresh and ready. I write a small note on the tape margin with a pencil. Remember the bones. Mo reads it over my shoulder. You want me to put that in the training materials, he asks. Not as a rule, I say, as a story. You know what else I'll put in, he says. What? He said that line you said to the board about modernization without memory. Don't turn me into a poster, I tell him. Too late, he says, gleeful. And for a second, I imagine my face in a hallway. It gives me a headache. It gives me hope. We hand over the room to the next shift. The city looks gray and full of coffee. I step outside into air that smells like bus exhaust and bakery sugar. It's not a romance. It's a life. On the walk to the lot, my phone pings with a message I don't expect. It's from a student at a community college on the South Side. He writes that he saw the hearing on a stream in class and that he didn't know there were jobs where the point isn't to be famous, but to make famous things possible. He asks if he can shadow me one night. He says he doesn't have math like he should. He says he has something else, patience. I type that patience is math you can spend in any room. Later that week, there's a small event with cookies and speeches where no speech is long enough to be a problem. They give out the first Morales grant for analog proficiency. Mo shakes the winner's hand like he's handing off a baton in a relay. The kid is older than him by 5 years and younger than me forever. He has a mother and a daughter and a shift he has to get to after this. He looks at the certificate like a door opened and nobody charged him toll. He hugs the paper. He says to nobody and everyone, I won't waste it. I go home and sit on my stoop and listen to a city that complains the way an old joint complains. The moon looks like a maintenance lamp you forgot to turn off. A neighbor's radio plays a song I loved at 20 and pretend to be too serious to love now. I know the hum of trains in the distance isn't loud enough to reach me, but I hear it anyway. It's in my bones. It's in my blood. It's under my feet. On a new night that looks suspiciously like the old one, the control room door stays green. The board behaves. The strip prints with nothing exciting on it, which is a miracle we don't name often enough.
I make a note on a sticky and leave it where the next pair of hands will find it. If the room locks you in, remember the switch. If the world locks you out, remember the kid. If someone smooth talks you into ignoring your eyes, trust the tape. If you get tired, get a cookie. This job is love in a very unpoetic uniform. Wear it like it's gorgeous. I didn't become a legend. We didn't change the world. We kept a promise to a city that must keep moving or it goes mean. The river still runs green on parade days and gray the rest. The tracks still argue with weather. The trains still keep time better than love. The men and women who run them still make jokes that would die at a cocktail party and flourish at 2 a.m. under fluorescent lights. Nothing ends. Everything continues. That is the point. Weeks later, on a night shift, when the lights hum like an old song, Mo tells me that he's been assigned his first solo block. He tries to hide what it means. He fails again. He will fail like that all his career, and it will save him. Do me a favor, I say. Start your shift with a thank you. To who, he asks. To the room, I say. It doesn't demand it, but it deserves it. He nods. He reaches out and taps the console like a friend. He whispers something I don't catch. It doesn't matter. The city keeps moving. The board stays honest. The analog panel hums like a thing that isn't alive but believes in us anyway. I take a breath. I let it out. I put one hand on the map and the other on the moment. We work. And the night, for once, keeps its promises.